longer video. This is to furtherly, again, support Hard Lens Media, which, as I mentioned in a shorter clip, is indeed, to me, one of the few programs that on YouTube that is indeed very, very similar to what news channels and news outlets were before the Telecommunications Act basically destroyed competition, and then the legalization of propaganda basically completed that destruction. Yes, granted, Operation Paperclip kind of began the end of that, but the fact is that it's definitely gotten a whole lot worse since the Clinton administration enacted that law. So, but yeah, it's a real critical problem. And I mentioned this again before, is that YouTube and Twitter right now act as disability accessibility access points under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is to say government entities in the USA get away with not fixing up their buildings by saying, hey, we have a YouTube channel, or hey, we have a Twitter channel, a Twitter account that you can get and or participate in these, get the data and or participate in these meetings through that, instead of being able to come or being able to otherwise get these records and or these meetings. Okay. Yes, since the COVID-19, when a lot of more things have been virtual, this has changed a touch, and some indeed entities have gotten on and done their own independent websites, but by and large, they're on YouTube, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, and if you can't get those platforms, as opposed to it used to be just disabled folks, it's now basically everyone. That even as indeed some entities are opening up, in many cases they're not. And therefore, it's now the only place that you can access government data, public meetings, is via these now heavily censored platforms. Which, again, goes to the concept that you can't argue these are private companies when government is using them as government outlets to avoid fixing their frickin' buildings. You can't do both. It has to be one or the other. They're either separate or they're together. Can't be both. And so this is why, again, in terms of restricting and censoring, okay, Hard Lens Media and many others, that is what it plain and simple is. It's not private companies have their, no. It's government restricting information that should be publicly available, especially, again, even more heightened over a live streamed news event, which is when their account was restricted, okay, and what it was supposedly over, making it even more criminal to my mind in terms of how awful it was. This needs to stop. Yes, the alternative platforms like Panquake, like Odyssey are coming. But in the meantime, we need to acknowledge these platforms, these conglomerates for what they are. Government platforms. Government censoring people. Okay? Because again, if you, when the government says, hey, you can only get this here, and yet the government also says it's public information, that means it's public domain. It's no longer freaking private. So, again, I'm calling for YouTube to end the censorship that you're doing in the government's name, okay? And, again, for everyone to wake up to what's really happening, okay? Because, again, you can't argue that it is government, okay, and that it is not. Those are two completely different things. They're not at all. You can't have it both ways. And therefore, you must acknowledge that it is indeed censorship, especially with the anti-competitive shutdowns that have happened. Okay? And again, until indeed all of the alternatives are accepted and are not challenged with this garbage of misinformation, okay, it is government sanctioned. And therefore, it is the government, if anything, it's the government's job to stop the censorship. But in so much as they have the private arm that is YouTube, complain to YouTube, as I am with this, as I'm going to post it to my YouTube channel. Call out their censorship, because that's exactly what this frickin' is. Thank you.